Hey heroes, and welcome to another terrifying episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is sponsored in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to contribute and vote in monthly polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel, then you can sign up for an event of your choosing over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelite. The link is in the description below, along with other places you can find me. Today is another one of those days where we're not technically looking at the Prime Marvel universe, Earth 616, but instead turning our attention to another alternate reality, Earth 2149. Like many other divergent and parallel worlds in the multiverse, this Earth shared many similarities with the Marvel universe we know, but had many subtle differences as well. For example, on Earth 2149, Steve Rogers became known as Colonel America and at one point served as President of the United States, albeit for less than a full term. However, things diverged far more dramatically from the world we know when a flash of light cracked across the sky, and an invader from yet another reality seemingly punched its way through the dimensional barriers. Apparently, Magneto was partially responsible for this being's arrival, having helped to bring it through to this reality in the hopes that it would deal a serious blow to the human population, thereby giving mutants a fighting chance. Of course, he soon realized that his actions had threatened mutant kind as well as humanity, as the thing he had brought through affected both equally. You see, the invader in question was an alternate reality counterpart to the obscenely powerful superhuman Bob Reynolds, aka the Sentry. One that had been infected with a highly virulent, terrifyingly contagious, and completely incurable virus that transformed those infected into flesh-eating zombies, usually within minutes of being bitten by another infected individual. The Avengers were the first on the scene to investigate, but with a virtually unstoppable Patient Zero, it wasn't long before these heroes were infected, and the virus rapidly spread from there. Interestingly, this particular zombie virus did not actually render those infected completely mindless, but rather caused them to be stricken with a persistent hunger that was so intense it inevitably overwhelmed their sense of self. Generally, this hunger can only be sated by living flesh, and an infected person, even in their most frenzied state, will have a natural aversion towards the taste of other zombies. Infected individuals typically exhibit a period of lucidity directly after feeding in which they regain their mental faculties, but the hunger soon returns, causing them to revert to twisted, flesh-eating versions of themselves. Furthermore, these Marvel zombies generally retain any skills or superhuman abilities they had prior to infection, with the notable exception of healing factors and regenerative powers, which are rendered inert by the virus. On the other hand, they do gain the ability to survive injuries that would otherwise be fatal, as long as the head remains mostly intact. In the case of a decapitation, the head itself would persist while the rest of the body would cease to function. Marvel zombies can effectively only be killed if the brain is either removed or completely destroyed. Even severe damage to the cranium or brain is potentially survivable if enough remains intact. But because the Avengers were the first to be infected, many of the civilians they attacked in their hunger were killed outright before they could turn into zombies themselves. Other heroes, meanwhile, attempted to fight back, which of course led to many of them being infected. This all resulted in a disproportionately large number of super-powered zombies and a swiftly dwindling human population. Making matters worse, any hope of quarantining or containing the virus evaporated when superhumans with the ability to quickly travel the globe were infected. Horrified by what his actions had wrought, Magneto left the safety of Asteroid M to aid the X-Men and attempted to rescue survivors. After being bitten, Hank Pym captured the Black Panther and secretly kept him alive, intending on cutting off pieces of his flesh to use him as a long-term food source. Still remembering the entry codes to the Baxter building, a zombified She-Hulk killed Franklin and Valeria Richards, causing this reality's Mr. Fantastic to begin slipping into madness. Nick Fury, meanwhile, gathered as many superheroes as possible on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier to plan their next move. While the big brains like Tony Stark, Reed Richards, and Bruce Banner stayed behind to try and find a solution, the other heroes attempted to rescue anyone they could, which inevitably resulted in even more of them getting infected. Some, like Magneto, managed to escape, but it was increasingly clear that they were in a losing battle. Furthermore, as Mr. Fantastic studied the virus, he began to regard some of the changes it made to human biology as improvements. Gathering the Fantastic Four together, he declared that this wasn't an infection, but the next step in human evolution, and infected his teammates with the virus before allowing them to bite and turn him as well. At the same time, Tony Stark was working on an interdimensional gateway that would allow survivors to escape. However, the zombified Fantastic Four attacked and intentionally turned Tony rather than kill him. Backed into a corner, Fury and several surviving heroes destroyed the gateway rather than risk endangering another world. While they succeeded in preventing the plague from spreading to other universes, in the end Fury was killed and even more of the heroes were turned. While all of that was happening, the dimension-hopping adventurer Ash Williams, having arrived in that reality shortly before the zombie outbreak, was also attempting to stop the undead heroes. Mistakenly thinking the zombies were connected to the Necronomicon, an evil book of the dead that he'd encountered in other realities, including his own, he joined forces with Dazzler and the Scarlet Witch to try and find it. He ultimately tracked a copy of the book to Dr. Doom's castle in Latveria, but soon learned that the zombie plague was extraterrestrial in nature rather than supernatural. Ash did convince the sentient tome to summon an army of creatures called Deadites to combat the zombies, and while the zombified heroes were vastly outnumbered, their superhuman abilities allowed them to easily overpower this army of darkness, eliminating the Deadites from their reality. While all of that was going down, Dr. Doom, who had already been bitten but hadn't yet turned, shepherded uninfected Latverian survivors through an interdimensional transporter. Before destroying this device to ensure they couldn't be followed, he also allowed Ash to use it to escape to another universe as well. Ash looked through several realities, trying to find one at least similar to his home dimension, Earth 818793, and ironically soon discovered that the one he ended up settling on had already been overrun by werewolves. But I digress. As a side note, there was also a counterpart to Ash Williams that was born on Earth 2149, but he was killed by a zombified Howard the Duck. In less than a single day, the zombie virus had made its way to every continent on Earth, becoming so widespread that not even remote or isolated locations like the Savage Land were safe. Within 3 days, the vast majority of the world's population had been consumed by the superhuman zombies, and survivors were becoming increasingly difficult to find. Still highly intelligent but ravenously insane, the zombie Reed Richards brought the remains of Tony Stark's dimensional gateway back to the Baxter building, intending on using it to spread the gospel of hunger, as he called it, to other worlds and continue feeding. As part of a plan to accomplish this, he successfully made contact with a younger and more naive version of himself from the alternate reality Earth 1610, better known as the Ultimate Universe. Communicating via hologram, it was a simple matter for the zombie Reed to disguise his undead nature. Providing Ultimate Reed with the plans to the gateway, Zombie Reed convinced him to build a counterpart in his own reality and come through to visit him. Arriving in the now barren Earth 2149, Ultimate Reed was quickly attacked by the zombified Fantastic Four and other undead heroes, but was soon rescued by Magneto, one of the few remaining uninfected superhumans. Magneto brought Ultimate Reed to an underground hiding spot where he'd been attempting to gather survivors, but had only found a grand total of 3 uninfected people. At the same time, the zombie Fantastic Four attempted to cross through to the Ultimate Universe. However, the Sue, Ben, and Johnny of Earth 1610 were able to keep them contained, imprisoning their undead counterparts in the Baxter Building. The three young heroes then rushed through the portal themselves to find and rescue their own Reed. In the end, the Ultimate Fantastic Four escaped back to Earth 1610 with the three survivors, while Magneto stayed behind and destroyed the device, ensuring that no zombies could follow them. As the superhuman zombies descended upon him, Magneto made one last-ditch effort to take out as many as he could, and did considerable damage to several of them, but was ultimately overwhelmed and completely consumed. With the zombies unsure of what to do next for food, Hank Pym, aka Giant Man, returned to his hiding spot to continue eating pieces of the captive Black Panther, but was followed by his ex-wife, Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp. The two fought about the fact that he'd kept this secret from her, and in the end Hank decapitated Janet by biting her head off. Meanwhile, the Silver Surfer had arrived on Earth for the first time in this reality, heralding the imminent arrival of the World Eater Galactus. The zombies soon attacked the Surfer, and many of them were maimed, mutilated, or killed in the ensuing conflict. Notably, Wolverine inadvertently destroyed his own right arm while trying unsuccessfully to cut through the Surfer's silver skin, while Iron Man was bifurcated by an energy blast, losing everything below his torso. Eventually, however, the zombie Hulk succeeded in killing the Surfer by eating his head in a single bite. Furthermore, the zombies soon realized that by consuming the Surfer's flesh, they gained a portion of his power cosmic. The zombies fought over this, and in the end, Giant Man, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Colonel America, Power Man, Wolverine, and the Hulk were the ones who remained. Galactus arrived soon thereafter, and while he easily repelled their initial attack, the cosmic zombies escaped and built a device that channeled their newfound power, weakening the World Eater. A group of zombie supervillains attempted to use this opportunity to feed, but were wiped out in a battle with the heroes. Colonel America was also killed during the fight, since an injury from Magneto had left his brain exposed, allowing the Red Skull to pull it out of his head. In the end, the 6 remaining superhuman zombies fed on Galactus, killing the World Eater and absorbing much more cosmic power. Now, I will note that at the same time as that conflict was happening, the zombie Fantastic Four, now calling themselves the Frightful Four, attempted to escape from their imprisonment on Earth 1610. However, they were ultimately defeated and destroyed by that world's Reed Richards, who at the time had been mind-swapped into the armored metal body of his arch-rival Victor Van Dam, rendering him immune to the virus. Also at the same time as all of this, back on Earth 2149, despite being down an arm and a foot, the still uninfected Black Panther escaped from his own imprisonment, taking the Wasp's severed head with him. Fortunately for him, he was found not by zombies, but by Magneto's mutant acolytes, who had left the safety of their orbital headquarters, Asteroid M, to search for their missing master. There was initially a scuffle when he was threatened by one of the acolytes, referred to here as Burns, but is clearly a version of Rusty Collins, sometimes known as Fire Fist. Anyway, the Black Panther killed Burns by throwing the zombie wasp's decapitated head onto his neck, but the leading acolyte, Fabian Cortez, didn't hold this against T'Challa, since Burns had disobeyed a direct order by refusing to stand down. Cortez ultimately brought the Panther back to Asteroid M, where another surviving mutant, Forge, was able to supply him with advanced prosthetics to replace his missing limbs. They also brought Janet's head with them, since it could be easily contained, allowing them to study the virus in a laboratory setting. Meanwhile, the 6 zombies who consumed Galactus, Hulk, Wolverine, Spider-Man, Luke Cage, Iron Man, and Giant Man, used their cosmic powers to leave the Earth and search for other inhabited worlds where they could feed, becoming known as the Galacti. For those who remained on Earth, a number of surviving zombies were organized by the Kingpin Wilson Fisk, who forged an alliance with the similarly infected Inhuman royal family and provided an alternative source of food. By using inhuman resources and technology, the mad scientist Miles Warren, aka the Jackal, was able to generate a steady supply of human clones for Fisk and his allies to eat. Fisk also used a lobotomized zombie Doctor Strange to generate portals to other realities, including the Prime Marvel Universe Earth 616. Seeking to spread to this world, Kingpin sent zombie Deadpool to Earth 616, where he emerged in the Nexus of All Realities located in the Everglades, and clashed with the Florida-based superhero team The Command, which was part of the 50-state initiative. While Command members Conquistador and Siege were killed in the ensuing conflict, zombie Deadpool's body was mostly destroyed, leaving only his head, and civilians he already infected were eliminated by the swamp's protector, Man-Thing. This incursion quickly caught the attention of Earth 616's interdimensional intelligence agency, Armor, which was led by the Native American mutant Charles Littlesky, aka Portal. Hoping to create a vaccine for the virus, Portal sent robotic agents, Machine Man and Jocasta, to collect an uninfected blood sample from Earth 2149, and while there were very few non-zombies left alive on that world, they got what they needed from Fisk's wife, Vanessa, who he had kept safe. During the trip, the Machine Man also eliminated more of the surviving zombies and destroyed their cloning operation, as the way the clones were used as a means to an end reminded him of how his fellow robots were treated on his own Earth. The zombies did attempt to sabotage Armor's vaccine by having the zombie Morbius impersonate his 616 counterpart, but this scheme was uncovered and the living vampire ultimately killed his undead doppelganger. Some zombies did escape from Armor's custody and got loose on Earth 616, but Morbius assembled a new team of Midnight Suns, which included the Witch, Jennifer Kale, the Werewolf, Jack Russell, the Son of Satan, Diamond Hellstrom, and the Swamp Creature Man-Thing. That crew went through a whole other ordeal involving the Hood, Dormammu, and a voodoo priest known as the Black Talon, but in the end they prevented the zombie plague from taking hold in their reality. The zombie Deadpool head, or Headpool as he would sometimes be called, did survive and, no longer stricken with hunger, ultimately joined a team of alternate reality counterparts, the Deadpool Corps. Back on Earth 2149, Fisk did succumb to his hunger, eating his own wife, and the number of surviving individuals left on the planet, infected or otherwise, dwindled to almost nothing. 5 years after the initial outbreak, Black Panther, Forge, and the Acolytes returned to the ruined Earth, finding no sign of zombie activity. By this point, the Wasp had been outfitted with a robotic body that prevented her from feeding, and eventually her hunger began to fade. Meanwhile, T'Challa had grown close with one of the Acolytes, Lisa Hendricks, and the two had a son named T'Chana. At the same time, the 6 zombie Galacti continued to prowl the stars, feeding on other worlds and leaving few survivors in their wake. On one planet, they briefly encountered a version of the Fantastic Four from Earth 616 who had inadvertently traveled there while trying to return an insectoid creature to the negative zone using the unreliable magic of King Solomon's golden frogs. Consisting of the Black Panther, Storm, the Thing, and the Human Torch, this FF ultimately escaped, preventing the zombies from making use of the magic frogs. But the Galacti realized that their cosmic powers enabled them to eat more than just living flesh, and they ended up consuming the Skrull planet itself before continuing their march across the universe. While very few beings survived direct encounters with the zombie Galacti, they did infect several other powerful individuals, including Firelord, Thanos, Gladiator, and the Phoenix. However, in just a few short decades, they seemingly exhausted their food supply once again. This sort of led to infighting, but that quickly came to an end when the Hulk killed the zombie Thanos. Meanwhile, back on Earth, T'Challa, Forge, and the Acolytes had attempted to rebuild as best they could with their limited population. For years, T'Challa and Fabian Cortez competed over leadership of their settlement, which they built in and around a grounded asteroid M, but the community ultimately chose the Black Panther, and thus the area was dubbed New Wakanda. While Cortez relented, years later his bitter son, Malcolm, began plotting to seize control for himself. T'Challa's son, T'Challa, eventually married Forge's daughter, and those two had a child of their own, a son named Kashamba. However, Malcolm Cortez secretly murdered T'Challa and his wife, making their deaths appear to have been an accident. And so T'Challa and Hendrix served as king and queen of New Wakanda for roughly 4 decades. During this time, the Wasp's hunger completely subsided, and she was given a more advanced robotic body. Then one day, T'Challa's young grandson, Kashamba, came upon the severed but still living head of zombie Hawkeye, buried in the ruins of New York. He brought it back to New Wakanda, where it was determined that his hunger had also disappeared, and he was given the Wasp's old robot body. This was evidence of an aspect of the zombie virus that potentially could have saved lives if it was discovered early enough, but we'll touch on that secret very soon. In the meantime, Malcolm Cortez gathered his own followers and prepared to make his next move. Soon after this, Cortez sent an assassin to murder the king in his sleep, leaving T'Challa with a fatal wound. In a last-ditch effort to save his life, the Wasp bit and infected T'Challa, transforming him into a zombie before he could die. The taste of human flesh caused the hunger to come rushing back for Janet, but the now zombified Black Panther stopped her from attacking his wife, and the two instead consumed the would-be assassin, before allowing themselves to be locked in a containment cell similar to the one that Bruce Banner had designed to hold the Hulk in his earlier incarnations. Sure enough, their hunger eventually faded again, which finally brings us to the uncanny secret of the zombie virus. If an infected individual simply goes without eating flesh for long enough, their ravenous hunger will simply disappear. How long this takes depends on the willpower of the person in question, and tasting human flesh will result in an immediate relapse, but theoretically any Marvel zombie could eventually be cured of their hunger simply by keeping them from feeding for long enough. However, while Janet and T'Challa were imprisoned, Malcolm Cortez seized control of New Wakanda and declared his intentions to execute all of the remaining zombies. In response, Forge and his acolyte ally Reynolds, no relation to the Sentry Bob Reynolds, attempted to help the Black Panther, the Wasp, and Hawkeye escape and lay low, and while they were found by Cortez, the survivors soon had a much bigger problem on their hands. Having devoured every other food source they could find in the universe, the Galacti had returned to Earth. However, upon seeing the remaining human settlement, the cosmic-powered zombies immediately started fighting over what to do with them. Hulk wanted to start digging in immediately, while Giant Man wanted to keep them alive and use them to start a breeding colony. Even as a zombie, Spider-Man was disgusted by that idea, and both he and Luke Cage sided with T'Challa and Forge, who in turn were forced to call a truce with Malcolm Cortez. Spider-Man revealed that Iron Man and the others hoped to make use of the interdimensional gateway, and Forge explained that while he had recovered and reconstructed the device, he was unable to make it work. With the Panther's side needing reinforcements, Reynolds unveiled his own disturbing pet project, explaining that he had recovered the remains of Colonel America's brain and transplanted it into the body of T'Challa's dead son. With an enraged T'Challa forced to accept this for the greater good, things ultimately culminated in a zombie versus zombie clash as the Black Panther and his allies attempted to stop the ravenous Galacti from killing the precious few remaining humans. Giant Man and Wolverine eventually succeeded in making their way to the civilians, including T'Challa's wife, but before they started eating, they had a sudden revelation. their hunger was gone. However, having tasted flesh since arriving on Earth, the Hulk remained ravenous and continued fighting, resulting in the deaths of even more zombies as they tried to stop him, including Iron Man, Hawkeye, Phoenix, and Firelord. In the end, the Hulk ate Reynolds, temporarily satiating him and causing him to revert back to Bruce Banner, and the cosmic-powered zombies took this opportunity to destroy his head, finally killing him. With the fighting over and the remaining zombies freed from their hunger, Giant Man, Forge, and Malcolm Cortez worked together to finish repairing the dimensional gateway, so the survivors could find supplies and, if necessary, relocate to a more suitable reality. However, Malcolm then confessed that the only reason the device wasn't working before was because he'd been actively sabotaging it. Furthermore, after luring the Black Panther and the other remaining zombies onto the platform, Malcolm Cortez transported them to some other universe before murdering Forge, allowing his rule over New Wakanda and Earth 2149 as a whole to go completely unchallenged. Spider-Man and the other zombies were separated in transit, but ultimately wound up on a parallel Earth dubbed Earth Zed. As a side effect of this, they soon found that their cosmic powers had disappeared, while their hunger started to return, and soon the virus began to spread anew. Determined to redeem himself, the zombie Spider-Man set out on a quest to find a cure, but things here escalated quickly when Giant Man bit and infected the Hulk of this reality, who then infected the Sentry, the powerful superhuman who had started this whole mess in the first place. In one sense, things on Earth Zed were even more dire than they were on Earth 2149, as here it wasn't just civilians who were wiped out, but most superhumans as well. The zombie Sentry formed an undead council of allies, including Namor, Moon Knight, Thundra, Quicksilver, Quasar, and the Super Skrull. Some of the surviving zombies from Earth 2149 attempted to oppose them, but the Wasp, Luke Cage, and the Black Panther were all eradicated by the more powerful zombified superhumans. However, the Spider-Man of Earth 2149 survived and gathered a team of new Avengers, including Wolverine, Hulk, and an uninfected Jim Rhodes, who had taken over as Iron Man. In the midst of a conflict between these two sides, Giant Man, having taken over Uatu's home on the blue area of the moon, used Watcher technology to trap the Sentry, intending on using him as a power source to open another dimensional portal. Meanwhile, Spider-Man and his new Avengers unleashed their ultimate weapon: nanomachines developed by Tony Stark that were designed to attack diseased and decaying flesh. While these nanites were unable to be aerosolized, Spider-Man contacted his former enemy, the Sandman, used a vaccine to render him immune to the virus, and laced his silicate body with the nanites, allowing him to quickly and easily destroy all of the remaining zombies, with the exception of the Sentry, who was still sealed in one of the Watcher's machines. Having observed all of this, the Watcher then decided to intervene and bring an end to this unstoppable zombie plague in the most elegant way possible, by making sure it was perfectly contained in a temporal loop, an Ouroboros in which the zombie virus devoured itself. And so he did the only thing he could do, in a sense the thing he had already done, and sent the Sentry not only to another dimension, but back in time, causing him to emerge in the past of Earth 2149, not only bringing the story of Marvel Zombies to an end, but causing it to begin in the first place. And with that, that's all I've got for you this week, and so thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me. Let me give a special shout out to all of my Patreon and Ko-fi supporters, Twitch subscribers, and YouTube members who help make the channel possible. By signing up for an ongoing amount on any of these platforms, you'll get your name in these special thanks here, but Patreon is the one that helps determine what topics get covered on the channel via monthly polls. That being said, if there's anything in particular that you want me to talk about, be sure to let me know in the comments. But that is indeed all I have for you this weekend, so until next time, true believers, happy Halloween and Excelsior!